Welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast. We have Hanim Jane Dogan with us today. She's partner at Prime Advantage Capital Partners. She's also CEO and founder at Women in Fashion, has founded a bunch of companies, has extensive business experience from pretty much all over the world, China, Shanghai most precisely, South Africa, and Paris. So it's going to be a fun one. It's presented to you by podpar.com if you want to start or scale your podcast, monetize it, go to podpar.com. It is also brought to you by Qualia Mind. If you want to optimize your mind, it's a supplement that I take on a daily basis. You can go to neurohacker.com/CEO wisdom. Hanim, welcome to the pod. Tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Thanks, Charles, for the introduction. So, a brief background in the world of Hanim. I am actually born in Turkey, and I come from a very remote village. No running water, no electricity. My dad was a shepherd, and my mom raised 5 children, and she was a cleaning lady. And pretty humble backgrounds. And from there, their only goal was to educate their children, which we've all done. I've got an MBA in economics and started 3 very successful businesses, sold them. Most importantly, I followed my passion. So I would like to talk about that today with you, Charles.
Right. And what are you up to nowadays? Like, what's occupying your mind?
So at the moment, I'm very much about giving back at this stage of my life. I am helping female founders to raise capital for their businesses and grow their businesses. As I've been an entrepreneur myself, I've been sitting on the other side. It's really great to have an idea, but at the end of the day, you do need capital to grow and accomplish the business goals you have.
Right. And what are the stats again? I believe that, yeah, like very few women get some capital, albeit they are probably 30-40% of founders nowadays. I think they're getting like 10% of the full share of the pie. So can you give us a brief overview of the situation and how you're helping solving it?
Yes. Oh, well, the stats are actually quite depressive. And if you look at the numbers, it's less than 10% actually. It's about 2.5, if I'm not mistaken. And even in the last few days since COVID, during COVID, there was a kind of a hype of supporting female founders by investors, by VCs, angels, uh, venture capital firms, but it's actually gone down in the last 2 years. And yeah, it's there are female founders, but they're not getting funded. So it's really like 2% globally.
And how are you changing that? And but how are you also making sure that you're getting a return on your capital investment and just not throwing out to any female founders out there?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. So it's not a charity. So when people do an investment, they do want a return. On average, the returns are actually between 5 to 10 years. So this is not when people invest in a company, it's not on a short term. Maybe then you want to go to the stock market. So it is a long term. And I think what has happened in the industry, why it's so low, it is really a kind of who's your role model and who's out there in the market. If you see that the investors, maybe 95% are male, and female founder is going to present to a male, uh, on average, there's no click. There's no like, I can understand where you're coming from. So this is really important. It's still, people think it's a money business, but it's a people business, because as an investor, you actually, the stats on this as well. You invest in the person, in the founder, you believe in that one. Obviously, the numbers are important, but at the end of the day, it is the person that you trust, or the ability you think that person has.
And I believe you're specialized in Africa, or do you also serve the full world when it comes to cutting check for founders?
Yes, no, we at Prime Capital, we do serve globally. Our actually main market is the UK, and we've expanded to the Middle East and Africa and the US. I have lived in Africa twice, and that's where I do have expertise in that continent. So I'm also passionate about it, and also because it's quite booming. It's the next, in my opinion, not just in my opinion, but as you look at the numbers, Asia, I've also lived a couple of times in Asia. It has been, and it still is, certain markets like India expanding, but Africa is the next continent where there's going to be double-digit growth.
Right. And tell us about your background in Africa itself. Like, did you raise capital yourself?
I had a business in Africa, an e-commerce business, which I started about 13 years ago. I did actually start on my own, not raising capital. The world looked a little bit different, and also I didn't have that know-how. If I would do it right now, I would definitely go out in the market. But I have helped others to raise capital in Africa.
What are the downsides of raising capital? Do you think like investors can put unwanted pressure on founders or give them a direction that is not scalable to their business and have the business implode on itself?
Um, can you repeat that,
Yeah,
please?
the downsides of injecting capital in a business is
Right.
capital injection for all types of business, and can it actually add up unwanted pressure on a founder and lead
Sure.
them in a path that they shouldn't go through?
A very good question, Charles, because people think sometimes founders think that the answer to their problems or answers to their business is having capital injected and raising capital. And most of the time, that is the wrong attitude. That's why when we come in, I come in as a strategic advisor. I look into a business if they to look at where they are and advise them if they're investment ready, and help them first of all to decide why they want to have the capital. Because you're totally right. Some people just attract the wrong investors. That's also really important. How much involvement do you want? That's also important because some people, especially VCs, they come in and they actually come and interfere in your business because they want to turn around or they want to grow because there's pressure, obviously, to have that return on investment within probably less than 5 years. So yes, it creates double, triple pressure on the founder. So that's why I work with my clients in to see why do you need an external investor in the first place.
And tell me why you're bullish on Africa, for example. I often reflect on the fact that South Africa seems to be struggling. You know, there's power outages, a bunch of founders, of ambitious founders in South Africa, they just leave the country to go elsewhere. So like personally, I'm not bullish on South Africa itself. Maybe I'm more bullish on other parts of Africa. Um, it would be probably the third place in the world in which I'm most bullish. First would be um, Latam. For sure, Latam is very exciting in terms of opportunity. Spanish speaking, it's one market, and it's where I'm in. I'm in Mexico. But tell us, like, what do you see in Africa and the potential in the next 10 years?
So you're absolutely right. I mean, South Africa has been in the news. I lived in South Africa, specifically when you talk about Africa, and over a certain period of time. And you do see that certain things go backwards, like the power cuts and water shortages. On the other hand, what people do not get to see, unfortunately, as you probably know, you've been a globetrotter yourself, media does not help all the time. It just give you a one side of the story. And then I'm not saying that those problems are not there, but it just is a whole different um, ambiance. I always say to South Africa, I really have a connection with that, that it really needs a really good PR company. because it only gets negative news out there. There is so much going on, good things, good businesses, very creative, very innovative with the means that they have. They speak English, they have so much potential. And unfortunately, it's not just being used, but it's also not properly being marketed, in my opinion.
Right. Tell us about your fashion background as well, and what innovative facets of fashions do you see nowadays in startups led by female founders, most precisely?
Right. So, the first part of my career, I was in IT, and I completely switched in my early 30s to fashion. So, two extremes. I've also written a book called 10 Successful Steps into Fashion, which is available in Amazon. I started my fashion career working for Karl Lagerfeld, so I was quite lucky. I started in haute couture and then went all the way down. I've seen the whole vertical market to mass market brands. At the moment, the fashion industry has been struggling, especially last few years, as we know, because first of all, fast fashion has got a bad name, and also it's really true. I mean, there is a lot of unsustainability. I think the challenge is to make the industry more sustainable. I think there are some amazing opportunities. For example, I can see there's a lot of companies that start making fabrics from very innovative natural materials. um, from potato peels, they're making fabrics to, recycled plastic, as we know, but it goes on and on. So there's a lot of innovative going on in there, and that's also one of the things I would like to invest in or help founders to raise capital in.
What have you seen in femtech that have caught your eye lately?
Right, that's a very good one, Charles, because femtech is one of the booming industries at the moment, especially when I talk about when I look here in the UK markets. So first of all, in femtech, it was about wearables, different uh, hardware that were in that industry. Now it's turned from hardware into more software. Um, I think women's health is an area that has not been properly served. Also, the same thing that applied to what I said before, because it was a male-dominated industry, and now we have more female researchers, doctors, etc. So I think there is a lot of um, I think there's going to be disruption in that industry. Very interesting to follow up.
Right. And what kind of disruption do you mean, like women tracking their health more? Do you mean like one startup really claiming the head of the race globally and providing women with the tracking that they need with their cycles, for example, their health, their fertility, and so forth? Like, what kind of disruption do you mean here?
Yes, exactly. So one big area that is underserved is the fertility, like tracking that. The period was another one, but I think also that it's goes further than that. I think it's women's health in terms of matching mental health as well. So there's a lot of combination with mental and physical health, and also because we see that needs for men are different than for women, clearly. And it's in combination with health and yeah, like physical health and mental health.
Tell us about the mental health aspect of it and female founders. What have you seen in
Mm,
that area? Is it self-doubt? Is it, I don't know, being harassed, or the lack of support, the loneliness? Like, what goes
mm,
through a female mind while she's founding a startup?
mm. That's a very good topic. You probably have heard of imposter syndrome, Charles, and it's incredible. I have talked to so many women over the last 30 years, and I'm probably one of them as well. Even if you come to a stage where you have a lot of success, you can, measure success in terms of wealth or your career path. Still, I see a lot of women lack some, or have that kind of imposter syndrome. They always lack a little bit of self-confidence. I mean, I'll give you a little example. I see a lot of female founders when they start raising, they start with small amounts. Oh, let's do 150K. Maybe let's go to 350. So, but when you look at a male founder, they would immediately start with, let's ask 1 million. Obviously, it's all based still on calculation, but it just shows me something significant. And with a lot of female founders, I actually raise most of the time that number that they want to raise. And yeah, I think they do feel lonely. But more important is, I think it's a lack of, they cannot see themselves. They're not enough examples in their own environment doing what they're doing.
And how do you actually solve that? Is it infusing a dose of bravado in yourself, aka testosterone, or is it doubling down on that? Not conservatism, but like being more careful also, because we've seen a bunch of dudes raise a bunch of money that they didn't need it and dilute themselves, So is that a good thing or a bad thing, like raising more carefully?
No, I think it's obviously not just raising more money, or it's not the rat race. I think it's more about, I see a lot of women, I do mentor a lot of women as well. So I think that if you work with women or female founders and you work one-on-one and you raise their self-confidence, you will see that influence into their business as well, that their confidence is raised. So they have a better direction. They've got someone to talk to, sometimes it's just that. Especially if you're a single founder, it's always more complicated. But I also believe in the diversity of a team. So I also advise to work with men, to bring men in definitely in the team, to have a diverse team, to have young people, older people. Even if you're a single founder, at the end of the day, the company's success is built on a team, not just an individual.
I agree. And I think, yeah, more female in this market, more female founders in this economy as well would definitely help. It would make the market more rational, ironically speaking, because us men, we often say that, yeah, women are emotional and so forth, but also women are, I think, are more rational and less testosterone in their way of raising capital, of running companies. They're more about consensus and cooperation and unification, which is better for an economy, right? You can think of market crashes for people that were way too greedy or just like put too much in their plates. So definitely think that would help the world scale in a better direction. Now, this year, what are your top goals? What do you want to achieve on your side, Hanim?
So one of my achievements would be to help a certain number of women definitely to raise. That's really, my goal on my professional side. As an individual, I like a holistic living. I want to have balance in my life. So I have personal goals. I've seen that you have some of them as well there listed. I think, the older I get, the more I think that I don't know enough. So I love reading. That's another personal goal. And I'm working on my second book, which is going to be a memoir.
How's that book going? Like a memoir is quite personal, it's quite emotional as well. It's a very long venture. So how's the writing of the memoir going? How much time do you dedicate to that on a weekly basis?
So I've been used to writing since I'm 12 on a almost daily basis as a journal. So the first book I wrote in 6 weeks, and this is a little bit longer. As you said, it's a personal journey. It feels like therapy sometimes. Um, so I think I will spend about 3 months.
Wow. Well, congrats on that. Where can people find out more about you, Anim?
So I am on LinkedIn. Um, and as the main social media platform.